All right, everybody. Hope you all had a great weekend. If you remember, on Friday, we were talking about title pawning, all the different types of predatory lending practices, and you learned, one, that it was very difficult to find information. Yes? Okay. What else did you learn?
I don't know. I didn't go to the first time I searched it. I didn't go to an actual site. I searched why token note is not a good idea.
Okay.
So I got it's this Christian website. It's what does God want you to do with your money? But it actually had not bad stuff on it. It had it said all the reasons why it wasn't a bad idea. Only the title was said
All right. But those of you who did go to the websites, what did you find or not find? Yeah.
You really have to sign into it before you can get any information.
I feel if you actually went to a place, you would get a lot more out of it.
Well, I think that you went. I mean, if you physically went to the
If we
place.
called or something.
Correct. If you called, you might get more. We did not do the calling bit. Yes.
$5,000 pawn can turn into about $9 grand.
Right, depending on what the interest rate is. The interest rate was I think about 100% is what I think we found. But if we went as high as 391%, I think it went up to 20 grand. All right, so.
It's only showing to here.
What?
It's only showing to here, if that's okay. I know.
All right, so a couple things. The first thing that we're going to do today is, since you're all going to start out, not all of you, most all of you are going to start out in debt because of college. Right? And some of you, or many of you, may find yourself in debt because you've made poor financial choices. Hopefully, after going through this unit, you won't do that. But we're human beings and we make mistakes. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start learning about how to get out of debt. And we're going to do an exercise in class today to show you how to use the snowball method. And then tomorrow I'm breaking you up into groups of 3 or 4. And you are going to all receive the exact same scenario. And your job is to get this person out of debt. And you're going to do that by trying to find ways to increase revenue, money, and decrease expenses. So I want you to think outside the box, all these different ways that you can use to get somebody out of debt. But before we do that, we have to look at what's called the snowball debt. All right? And so what I've handed to you, you should all have, is your two handouts. The first one is called Baby Steps. As you can see, on the baby steps, they're up on the screen as well. This is something that you're going to need not only for this section, but also for the next section in investing. Okay? Because the 7 baby steps start with how to get out of debt, and then they finish with how to build wealth, and then, as we were talking about the other day, giving money to charity, okay? Which is a very noble thing to do. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to give money to charity if you don't have any. Right. So, step 1, extremely important. What does it say? Heidi. You're not Heidi. She's Heidi. I did the no looking.
Step 1, $1,000 is an emergency fund, or $500 if you make less than $20,000.
All right. Does anybody make more than $20,000 in here? I don't think you do. I'd be working full time at $10 an hour.
Oh.
All right. Excellent. You got a question?
Well, is this for just a kid our age?
Well, kid your age, what does it say?
It doesn't say.
Do you make over 20,000 or less than 20,000?
Less.
So how much should your emergency fund be?
500. Wait. So is this just for a person, or is this for a teenager?
Teenagers are people too.
Well,
I know you might find that hard to believe.
Is this for an adult or a teenager?
It's just for
people.
Yeah, I don't see what can $1,000 in an emergency fund do? What type of emergency?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about. First of all, is emergency fund.
Your car breaks
Okay?
down.
If you are making less than 20,000, which everybody in this room is, except for
You.
me and Mr. Jinsky, You need $500 in your emergency fund. Okay? That's your minimum balance. All right? If you are over 20K, minimum 1,000. Okay? You do this because life happens. Life happens. Okay? You will have an emergency. What is that emergency? You don't know, but you know you're going to have one. All right? Aaron, you gave an example when Max was asking a question about,
Your car breaks down or something.
yeah, so if your car breaks down or something. So it could be,
Insurance doesn't cover it.
right, well, it could just be something like a tire. Right? It could be that it's time to get your car inspected and it needs brakes. Maybe it needs new tires, all four. Right? Catalytic converter goes, whatever it might be. Emergencies happen. And for most of us, they often happen with our cars because cars are mechanical and they break down. But there are other emergencies. What if you get injured and you have to go to the emergency room? Your insurance doesn't pay for the entire visit. Your insurance, at best, pays all but a $50 deductible.
That's why Dartmouth Scott is like so, they're owed so much money because they are the only hospital that accepts people without insurance.
No, all hospitals, all nonprofit hospitals will take people without insurance. Dartmouth being the largest hospital in the area, what happens is they take a large percent of uninsured people. There's something called the Medicaid tax that the state of New Hampshire has been siphoning off much of that money for their own general fund and using it to balance the budget, or not even to balance the budget, but use it for appropriations in the budget. And Dartmouth is losing a great deal of money because they're not getting this reimbursement back from the federal government. So there's been a lawsuit. There's been 2 courts now that's ruled in favor of the hospitals, and so New Hampshire has to figure out what they're going to do with that money. So the first step is to have an emergency, because emergencies happen. Now, if you remember, we talked about credit cards. Are credit cards to be used in emergency?
No,
Why?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would use it.
Because they can, that can hurt your credit, and if you don't know like how much money is on your credit card and you go over in an emergency, because like if you have an emergency and like you don't know how much it's going to cost, you're not going to be like, oh wait, I can't get, like you don't want to be in a situation where you're like, oh I can't get this or I can't buy this because it's an emergency.
But when you use a credit card, what are you doing?
Interest.
You're borrowing money from somebody who then charges you interest, right? Which doesn't mean you can't use the credit card for the emergency, because you may have to because you don't have that money available to you. You're on a trip somewhere.
It's in a bank, the $500 in the bank. So you
But what you do is then
pay
use
it
the
off.
credit card, pay it off immediately, and then do what?
Start saving again.
Yes. So the number one thing, this is why it's number 1 on the list, is to make sure you have an emergency fund of $1,000 or $500 minimum. That's the start. You'll see later it's going to talk to you and get to some of the other steps, but you want 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Okay, that's coming later. But the first thing is everybody can do this. Everybody can save $500 and everybody can save $1,000. Okay? Once you do that, okay, you're still making, if you're in debt, you'd still be making your minimum payments. First thing is to get the emergency fund, because if you don't have that emergency fund, you don't have that money available, what you're going to do is you're going to swipe that card and you're going to get yourself further and further into debt. So that's why number 1 is emergency fund. All right, number 2 is to use the snowball method to pay off your debts. And that's what we're going to focus on really for the rest of this period, or at least part of the period, because who knows how long this is going to take. So as you can see, you have a second handout. Okay? The second handout, which is called snowball debt. And it's just a simple form, right? It's just a simple form that has things like debt, total payoff, minimum amount, and new payment. Right? So this part of the exercise is to show you how the snowball debt works. Okay? Anybody want to venture a guess of why they call it snowball and where we're going to head with this? Yeah, go ahead, Tyler. Pam. Sorry.
Because it like just keeps adding up and it gets like bigger and bigger.
Right, but we're doing the opposite though. To pay it off, we're going to do it the opposite. We're going to build it up to pay it off.
Yeah.
So each payment gets bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got that I'm going to throw up on the screen. I'm going to throw up on the screen for you. The scenario that we're going to work on in class today. The scenario that we're going to work on in class. All right. As you can see, you've got the headings: debt, interest rate, current balance, and minimum payment. All right. So what I want you to do right now is you need to reorganize this so that we're going to start with the lowest amount owed. So we're going to go,
Would that also be the one that was due in the shortest time?
we're looking at the current balance, not the interest rate. So we're going to look at the current balance, and we're going to organize it so that the lowest is first, all the way down, there's 5 of them, to the highest. Okay? Go ahead.
That's already organized.
Lisa should be first.
Okay.
The lowest current balance to the highest current balance.
And do we put that in the section of total payout?
Okay, and what you're going to do is you're going to put it in the total payoff. That's your current balance. Yep. So the total payoff, you're going to organize it lowest to highest, and then go ahead and put in the minimum payment except for put in the minimum payment. Yeah, go ahead and put in the minimum payment for all of them. All right, so as you're doing this, right, why do you think that we're not going by interest rate, but rather we're going by smaller balance?
Because if you have a larger balance, it'll accumulate more interest. Like if you had $12,000 with that would probably accumulate more interest than $1,000, even if $50,000 at a higher interest.
Okay, I think that's a great answer. What do you think?
Well, even like MasterCard, if I rounded that to like 10% of that balance is like $134, but even just 6% of the student loan is going to be a lot more than that.
So you're following the same logic as Aaron. Can somebody give me a different circumstance of why we're going to go with the smaller first?
Really get one out of the way completely.
Right
The rest.
on. That's exactly it. It's to get the feeling of accomplishment, right? How many times have you tried to do something and do something and do something and felt like you're not making any progress?
Yep.
That's the idea. By taking the smaller balance and paying that off first, you feel some relief. And it helps to relieve the stress that's associated with the debt. Yes, sir?
No, I totally think that makes sense. Because whenever like I have a bunch of stuff to do and I just like make a list like on my board, I always start